paradrama tales. It was supposed to be one of the happiest nights of my life, celebrating love, achievement, and new beginnings. Instead, with one thoughtless, humiliating act, the person I trusted most turned my special day into a memory I'll never be able to erase. For as long as we'd been together, Charles and I had made it a tradition to celebrate our birthdays side by side. Our birthdays fell close enough together that combining them into one celebration just made sense. One big night, one big party, shared with the people we loved most. At first, it was fun. It felt like our little thing. We would plan small gatherings, share cakes, laugh over inside jokes. But as the years went by, something started to feel uneven. I noticed that while I poured effort into making each celebration special, baking cakes from scratch, organizing surprise dinners, decorating, even when I didn't have much to spare, Charles's contributions always felt a little rushed. A gift card stuffed in a card, a half-hearted dinner reservation, a last-minute, "What do you want to do?" that left me scrambling to save the day. It wasn't about money. I made less than him for a long time, but it never stopped me from finding ways to make him feel seen, valued, and celebrated. I didn't need grand gestures, just thoughtfulness. Effort, care. After last year's disappointment, when he had seemingly thrown something together the night before, we had a hard conversation about it. I told him how it made me feel when the effort wasn't mutual. How it wasn't about dollar signs, but about making someone feel important on their special day. He seemed to understand. He promised to do better. And honestly, I believed him. This year felt different from the start. He took the lead in inviting people, a good mix of his family and my closest local friends. He even bought the cake, something I usually handled. And for my gift, he gave me a spice rack, which sounds small but meant a lot to me. It showed he had listened to my passing comments, noticed what I needed. That gesture alone gave me hope that this time he truly understood. I, for my part, wanted this night to feel magical. Not just because it was our birthdays, but because it marked a new chapter for me too. I had recently achieved a major milestone in my career, something I had worked incredibly hard for, and I was proud. I wanted to celebrate that accomplishment with the people who mattered most. So I booked a private room at a restaurant, paying for the space in full myself. I covered half of the food costs, even though I didn't have to. I got my hair done, my eyebrows shaped, my lashes lifted. I wore a beautiful new blouse. I wanted to feel radiant, celebrated. That night, as we gathered around the table, everything seemed to be falling into place. The food smelled amazing. The room buzzed with laughter and conversation. My friends were there, smiling and excited. His family was lively, chatty, in good spirits. For the first time in a long time, I let myself relax and believe. Maybe this would be the memory we could both hold on to forever, a symbol of a relationship moving forward, stronger and more thoughtful. When the cake came out, everyone cheered. We agreed to take pictures, pretending to blow out the candles just to avoid germs. We even laughed about it. It felt lighthearted and joyful. Everything I hoped it would be. I had no idea that within minutes everything would fall apart. Looking back now, I can see it so clearly. How much hope I had pinned on that night, how much meaning I had wrapped around a single celebration. And how one careless moment, one thoughtless decision, could unravel it all. This year wasn't just about birthdays for me. It wasn't just about blowing out candles or exchanging gifts. It was about something bigger, something personal. I had fought my way to a major career achievement, and it meant everything to me. There had been sleepless nights, sacrifices that no one else could see, quiet moments where I wondered if I would ever get there. If all the hard work, the long hours, the moments of doubt would finally amount to something real. And now it had. I had done it. So when we started planning this birthday dinner, I wasn't just planning another celebration. I was honoring a personal victory, something that no one had handed to me, something that was mine. That's why I chose to splurge a little. The private room at the restaurant wasn't cheap, but it felt worth it. A way of saying, you deserve this. I handpicked the menu with care, selecting dishes that felt decadent, celebratory, joyful. I didn't want anything extravagant, just something intimate and special, surrounded by the people who mattered most. Even the little things mattered to me. I booked appointments to get my hair done, my eyelashes lifted, my brows shaped. I picked out a soft, elegant blouse that made me feel polished and confident. I wanted to walk into that room feeling like I was stepping into the next chapter of my life. One where I could finally breathe, finally say, made it through. Charles knew how important this milestone was to me. We had talked about it. He had listened to me rant through the stress, the setbacks, the little wins along the way. He had seen the moments when I doubted myself, when I questioned if I was good enough. He had been there. Or so I thought. That's why it felt so meaningful to me that he was taking the celebration seriously this year. When he said he would handle the invitations, I felt a rush of gratitude. When he said he bought the cake, it made me smile. When he handed me the spice rack, a gift that showed he had been paying attention to the small things I loved, I felt something soft bloom in my chest. Maybe this was the start of something better. Maybe this was him stepping up in ways I had quietly wished for, without having to beg or remind or feel small for wanting more. In the hours leading up to the dinner, I was filled with a kind of cautious excitement. I curled my hair carefully, watching my reflection in the mirror. I dusted a little extra highlighter on my cheekbones, thinking about how proud I felt, not just of how I looked, but of who I had become. This night was a celebration of survival, of perseverance, of finally stepping into a version of myself I had worked so hard to build. And in that quiet, hopeful space, I told myself that maybe, just maybe, this night would be the start of a new chapter for us too. A night where effort met effort. Where love was reflected back with the same intensity it was given. A night where all the invisible labor of loving and forgiving and believing would finally be seen. I was wrong. When we arrived at the restaurant, the energy felt light and promising. The private room I had reserved was cozy but elegant. Soft lighting, polished wooden tables, simple floral centerpieces. It was exactly what I had envisioned: intimate, warm, special. One by one, guests filtered in. My closest friends, people who had stood by me through thick and thin, hugged me tightly and gushed over how lovely everything looked. Charles's family filled the room with their chatter and laughter, greeting me politely, some even warmly. For a brief moment, I let myself relax. Maybe this night really would be different. The servers moved quietly through the room, taking drink orders, bringing out appetizers. Glasses clinked, conversations overlapped, and the room buzzed with life. Charles stood beside me, his hand lightly at my back, smiling and laughing along with everyone else. I looked over at him and thought, maybe he really heard me after all. Maybe he really understood how much this meant to me. As dinner was served, I took it all in. The way my friends' faces lit up when they tasted the food, the laughter that bounced off the walls, the way Charles leaned into conversations, making an effort with everyone. I felt seen, I felt celebrated, and most importantly, I felt like I had done something brave. Not just in my career, but in allowing myself to hope again. Hope that love could feel mutual. Hope that effort would finally be met with effort. Hope that I wasn't the only one carrying the weight of making things special anymore. As plates were cleared and full billies settled into easy conversations, a server rolled out the cake. It was beautiful, simple but elegant, with delicate piping and a few small candles waiting to be lit. Charles grinned at me and squeezed my hand. We had agreed beforehand that we wouldn't actually blow out the candles, just pose for pictures, a small nod to being cautious about germs. Everyone laughed and gathered around, phones in hand, ready to capture the moment. First, we posed together, pretending to blow out the candles while our friends and family snapped photos. Then Charles took a picture alone with the cake, his smile wide, his family cheering and teasing in the background. Finally, it was my turn. I moved toward the table, carefully lifting the cake with both hands. I smiled for the cameras, feeling a little silly but happy. This was the picture I wanted to remember. Me proud, glowing, holding a cake that symbolized not just another year of life, but a year of becoming someone stronger, someone who had earned her place. The room was filled with laughter and love. Everything felt right. I never saw it coming. In 1 second, I was standing there, balanced, careful, smiling for the pictures, and in the next, Charles's hands were at my back, pushing me forward, forcing me toward the cake. At first, I thought he was kidding, a playful nudge, something harmless. I tried to resist, laughing nervously, not wanting to ruin the moment. But he didn't stop. He pressed harder, arching over me, pushing with full force. I struggled. My friends shouted for him to stop, but his family cheered him on, laughing louder. And then, in one humiliating second, my face smashed into the cake. The room exploded with laughter, not with meat at me. I froze, cake smeared across my face, my hair, my blouse. Humiliation burned down my spine like fire. The night that had been so full of hope, so full of meaning, shattered in an instant. And there, in front of everyone, I realized the hard truth: I had made myself beautiful for a man who thought my dignity was a punchline. For a few seconds after my face hit the cake, I couldn't move. The room was filled with laughter, some light, some loud and raucous, and all of it rang in my ears, deafening, cruel. I blinked through frosting and crumbs, stunned, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I could feel the cold, sticky icing sliding down my cheeks, sinking into my carefully done hair, staining the brand new blouse I'd picked out with so much care. The blouse I had worn to mark a new chapter in my life. The one that now clung to my skin, heavy and ruined. Behind me, Charles laughed too, loud and proud, like he had just pulled off the greatest joke of the century. And then, as if the first blow wasn't enough, he reached for me again, trying to smear even more cake into my hair, my clothes, my skin. That's when I snapped. I turned instinctively, hand flying up, and slapped him across the face. The sound echoed through the small room, silencing the laughter almost instantly. For a moment, everything froze. Charles looked at me, stunned, as if I was the one who had crossed a line. His family gasped, long faces replacing the laughter they had been indulging in just seconds earlier. I heard someone, maybe his mother, start to rise from her seat, muttering something under her breath. My friends jumped up too, one of them stepping between me and Charles, their faces tight with anger and disbelief. I was shaking, heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode out of my chest. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not here. Somewhere in the kiosk, I heard Charles's voice, defensive and bitter. It was just a joke. You ruined everything by overreacting. Everyone does this. It's normal. You embarrassed yourself. I wiped a hand across my face, smearing the mess even more. Through blurred vision, I saw the cake. Smashed, ruined. Just like everything else I had tried to build that night. And still, part of me wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. A stupid, tasteless prank gone wrong. But deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't just a joke. It was a betrayal. It was a public reminder that my dignity, my effort, my milestones, they didn't matter as much as making people laugh, making his family laugh at my expense. In that moment, something inside me cracked. It wasn't just about the cake. It wasn't even about the ruined blouse or the ruined night. It was the realization that the person I loved, the person I thought I could trust, would throw me under the bus so easily just to be the center of attention. That when given the choice between protecting me and entertaining others, he chose the latter. I couldn't stand there another second. I gathered my purse, my ruined dignity, and what little strength I had left, and I walked out, across the main floor of the restaurant, cake dripping from my hair and staining my clothes. People stared. Some whispered, some even laughed. I kept walking. I had come to celebrate a milestone. Instead, I was leaving covered in cake, betrayal, and a heartbreak I hadn't seen coming. And somewhere inside the broken pieces of myself, a new truth started to form. Love without respect is not love at all. The walk from that private room to the restroom was one of the longest of my life. The moment I stepped out into the main dining area, I felt the weight of every pair of eyes in the restaurant land on me. Conversations hushed. Forks paused mid-air. Heads turned to watch the woman. Hair matted with frosting, blouse stained with red and blue dye, shoulders squared only by sheer willpower. Stumble her way across the room. I could hear the low murmurs, the poorly hidden laughter, the gasps. I didn't have to look up to know they were staring. I could feel it. The pity, the amusement, the judgment. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I forced myself to keep going, refusing to let my legs buckle under the weight of humiliation. I kept my head high, even though my cheeks were burning hotter than they ever had before. When I finally pushed open the door to the restroom, it was almost a relief to be alone. Away from the stares, the whispers, the sound of muffled laughter lingering behind me. I stood in front of the mirror, taking in the damage. Cake was smeared across my face, chunks of frosting clinging to my hair like some grotesque mockery of the careful styling I had been so proud of just hours before. My blouse, once soft, elegant, and new, was stained, the dyes bleeding into the fabric like bruises. There was no way to salvage it. No amount of wiping or scrubbing would erase what had happened. I reached for a paper towel, my hands trembling as I tried to clean myself up. The frosting stuck stubbornly to my skin, to my hair, to the delicate threads of my clothing. Every swipe felt futile, a reminder that some stains, no matter how hard you try, just don't come out. I twisted my ruined hair into a bun, trying to make it look halfway decent, but it only made me look more defeated. My eyes, red rimmed with the tears I refused to shed in front of them, stared back at me from the mirror. I barely recognized the person looking back. This wasn't just about a birthday anymore. It wasn't just about cake or jokes or misunderstandings. It was about something far deeper, the kind of betrayal that doesn't show up in bruises but in broken trust, in shattered dignity. I leaned against the sink, letting the cold porcelain steady me. For a few long minutes, I just stood there, breathing, trying to find pieces of myself in the ruins of what had been such a hopeful night. And in that stillness, a thought surfaced, clear, undeniable. I didn't deserve this. Not the humiliation, not the dismissal, not the blame for reacting when I was the one who'd been violated. I straightened my shoulders and wiped the last streaks of frosting from my face. I wasn't going to shrink away in shame, not tonight. If anything had been ruined, it wasn't me. It was the version of love I had tried so hard to believe in. When I stepped out of that bathroom and walked back toward the private room, I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just the aftermath of a ruined party. It was the beginning of reclaiming my voice and my worth. When I returned to the private room, the atmosphere had shifted completely. The earlier buzz of laughter and conversation had dissolved into a thick, awkward silence. Charles's family sat stiffly around the table, avoiding eye contact, their smiles long gone. My friends hovered nearby, tense and protective, their faces tight with anger. And there was Charles standing there, arms crossed, his jaw tight with frustration. As soon as he saw me, he launched into it. No apology, no concern. Just anger masked as justification. "It was just a joke," he said, as if that somehow made it all okay. "Everyone does it, it's not a big deal. You're making a scene over nothing." I stared at him, cake still clinging stubbornly to strands of my hair, feeling the disbelief settle deeper into my bones. A joke. Ruining my night, my celebration, my confidence. That was a joke. I opened my mouth trying to find the right words, but before I could even begin, he barreled on. "You embarrassed yourself," he said sharply. "You slapped me in front of my family. You made it look like I did something horrible when I was just trying to have fun." My friends bristled. I saw one of them step forward, ready to say something, but I shook my head slightly. This was my moment. I needed to be the one to answer. "I told you to stop," I said, my voice shaking. Not from weakness, but from the sheer effort it took to stay calm. "I fought you. You saw that. You ignored it. You humiliated me in front of everyone." His mother jumped in then, her voice tight with disapproval. "It's just how we do things in this family. You could have handled it with more grace instead of causing a scene." A fresh wave of hurt crashed over me. Not only had I been publicly humiliated, but now the blame was being laid squarely at my feet. For reacting, for defending myself, for not smiling and laughing while my dignity was stripped away. "You're overreacting," Charles insisted again, as if saying it enough times would make it true. But deep inside, something was shifting. Where once I might have doubted myself, second-guessed my feelings, tonight I felt something different, stirring certainty. "No," I said, meeting his gaze steadily. "I'm reacting exactly the right amount to being disrespected." The room went still again. I could feel the tension, the judgment, the unspoken expectation that I would fold, apologize, patch it all up to save their comfort. But I was done carrying the burden of making everyone else feel better at my own expense. "You didn't just ruin a birthday," I said quietly. "You ruined my celebration. You ruined the trust I had in you. You made a joke out of me and expected me to laugh along with you." Charles opened his mouth, maybe to protest, maybe to apologize, but I didn't give him the chance. "You showed me tonight exactly how much my dignity is worth to you." I picked up my purse, slinging it over my shoulder with hands that no longer trembled. And that's something I can't forget. Without another word, I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because in that moment, I realized something that should have been obvious all along. Respect isn't something you beg for. It's something you demand, by leaving when it's denied. The door to the restaurant clicked shut behind me, but the echoes of what had just happened clung to me like a second skin. I stood outside for a moment, breathing in the cool night air, trying to steady the storm swirling inside my chest. My hands were sticky from the remnants of frosting, my hair was stiff with dried icing, and my heart felt hollowed out. In that heavy silence, one truth rang louder than anything Charles or his family had said. I couldn't forgive this. It wasn't because I was stubborn. It wasn't because I couldn't take a joke, or because I was too sensitive. The way they had tried to paint me, it was because something sacred had been broken. I had trusted him with my joy. I had trusted him with my vulnerability, my pride, my effort. I had trusted him to stand beside me, not tear me down when I was at my most open, most celebratory. And when it mattered most, he chose entertainment over empathy. He chose to make me a spectacle when I had simply wanted to be celebrated. I thought about the nights we had spent planning together, the long conversations about birthdays past, the promises that things would be different this year. I thought about the spice rack he gave me, a gift that once felt meaningful and now felt like a mockery. Because a man who listens closely enough to pick the perfect kitchen accessory should also listen closely enough to know not to humiliate the woman he claims to love. I walked down the sidewalk, my heels clicking on the pavement, my mind moving faster than my feet. My phone buzzed in my bag. Probably Charles, maybe his mother. But I didn't check. I didn't want to read their excuses or demands for apologies that would never come. I made it to my car and sat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not here, because tonight wasn't about sadness anymore. It was about clarity. If Charles had loved me the way I deserved to be loved, he would have protected my dignity, not been the one to destroy it. If he had respected me, he would have listened to my no, not pushed harder when I resisted. If he had valued me, he would have recognized the gravity of my achievement, not smeared it, literally and figuratively, across my face. The truth settled into me like stone. This was not love, not the kind I wanted, not the kind I needed, not the kind I would ever settle for again. Later, when we spoke for the final time, Charles tried to backtrack. He admitted he was wrong, but he acknowledged he shouldn't have pushed. He said his family now hated me for making a scene. But every apology he tried to give was laced with blame, with excuses, with the expectation that I would shoulder the guilt for standing up for myself. And in the end, it wasn't even his actions that made my decision clear. It was his reaction. He hadn't shown remorse for hurting me, only regret that he had to face consequences for it. So I ended it. I told him that love without respect is hollow, that trust, once shattered so carelessly, cannot be patched together with half-hearted words, that he hadn't just ruined a night, he had ruined the future I thought we were building. And then I blocked him, not out of spite, not out of anger, but out of love for myself, the woman who had worked too hard, come too far, to let anyone treat her like a joke ever again. Even after I ended things, the fallout wasn't over. It started with a message from Charles. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement of the deeper hurt he had caused, but a demand. He said that his mother was struggling emotionally, that she was humiliated by the scene at the restaurant, and that for the sake of peace, I should apologize to her. An apology to her. I sat there staring at the message, stunned all over again. It wasn't enough that I had been humiliated. It wasn't enough that my career milestone, my birthday, my dignity had been smashed along with that cake. Now I was being asked to apologize to the very people who had cheered as it all happened. Charles framed it like I was heartless if I refused. He told me his mother had been battling mild depression for years, something he had never mentioned before, and that my actions, my reaction to being assaulted with a cake, had somehow worsened her condition. He didn't talk about my panic attack in the bathroom. He didn't mention the nights of work I had lost preparing for that celebration, or the hours I had spent believing this year might be different. He didn't seem to care that I had crossed a restaurant full of strangers, humiliated and alone, trying to salvage my self-respect. Instead, he painted me as the villain because I had dared to react. It would have been so easy to crumble under that pressure, to feel guilty, to tell myself that maybe, just maybe, I should apologize. Even if just to keep the peace, to smooth things over, to close the book neatly and without any lingering anger. But deep down I knew better. Women are conditioned from the moment they can walk and talk to apologize for making others uncomfortable. Even when they're the ones being hurt, we're told to be the bigger person, to forgive first, to smile through humiliation because it's just a joke, to stay silent to keep the peace. I wasn't doing it anymore. I responded simply and clearly, I'm sorry she's struggling, but I will not apologize for standing up for myself after being publicly humiliated. No anger, no negotiation, just a boundary drawn in the clearest, boldest line I could manage. Because here's the truth, being kind does not mean being a doormat. Having empathy does not mean tolerating disrespect, and maintaining peace should never come at the cost of your own self-worth. After that, I blocked him completely. His number, his social media, his family's contacts. It wasn't about punishing him. It was about protecting myself from the cycle of blame, guilt, and gaslighting that would keep trying to pull me back in if I allowed it. Closure didn't come with a conversation. It didn't come with mutual understanding. It came when I realized I didn't need his permission to move forward. I could close the door myself, lock it, bolt it shut, and walk away without regret. And so I did. Maybe somewhere down the line they'll tell themselves whatever story they need to sleep at night. That I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too unwilling to laugh along. But I'll know the truth. I wasn't too sensitive. I wasn't too dramatic. I was brave enough to say, this is not the life I choose. And that is a strength no one can ever take away from me. Looking back now, it's almost surreal how quickly everything changed. One moment, I was standing in a room full of people, celebrating not just a birthday, but a personal triumph. The next, I was wiping cake off my face, walking away from someone I thought would protect me, not humiliate me. It took me time to realize that the moment my dignity was treated like a joke, the relationship was already broken. Because respect isn't optional. It's not a luxury to be handed out when it's convenient or withheld when it gets in the way of a laugh. Respect is the foundation of every real, lasting relationship. Friendship, love, family. Without it, everything else crumbles. Trust, intimacy, safety. You cannot build a future with someone who sees your humiliation as entertainment. You cannot thrive alongside someone who demands you smile through your own shattering. Choosing to walk away wasn't easy. It wasn't painless. But it was necessary. I didn't walk away because I stopped loving him. I walked away because I finally started loving myself more. And if you're listening right now, if you're sitting with the uncomfortable weight of wondering whether it's too much, to ask for basic respect. Let me be clear, it's not too much, it's the bare minimum. You deserve to be with people who honor your boundaries, who celebrate your wins, who understand that dignity is never the punchline of a joke. And if someone, anyone, shows you otherwise, believe them. Protect your heart, protect your spirit, and most of all, protect your self-respect. If this story resonated with you, share your experience in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who crossed a line you couldn't ignore? Let's build a community where boundaries are honored and self-worth isn't up for debate. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more real stories about healing, growth, and reclaiming your power. Because at the end of the day, you're not too much. They were too little.